Go. Hey everyone, Adrian here from the Heart Red Spade podcast. My voice is a little bit screwed up today. I have a summer cold, so if it sounds a little bit weird, you know why. Today I've got a very special guest. He's a friend of mine from Cape Town, Nic Turton. He's someone I met while doing gymnastics rings training, and funny how the rings bring about a lot of optionality and how they introduce you to people from all different walks of life. And the reason why I asked Nic to have a chat today is because of his industry. He works in film and media. And as you know by now, I want to bring in people from, excuse me, a variety of backgrounds to tell their stories and how they use the concept of optionality to build success in their careers, what challenges they've faced, how they've overcome them, and so on and so forth. But without any further ado, I would like to present Nic to you guys. So Nic, welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Adrian, how's it going?
All good, thanks. Can't complain. Tell us more about your story. You know, I'm keen to hear more about this.
It really depends how far you want me to go back. I think just to sum it all up in one long line, as quick as I can, as concise as possible. I initially, after leaving school, went to study Bachelor of Science at UCT. And very short into that process, I realized that, you know, that old adage, just because you can doesn't mean you should, or it's for you. And it really didn't excite me as much as I thought it would. So I completely pulled out of that, was at a bit of a loss for a year or so, and then kind of realized my passion had always been sound. I DJ'd, I'd always been the guy with the music at the party. I'd always had some kind of interest in sound in that creative field. So went to go study sound engineering at a small college in Cape Town called Cape Audio College. Then after graduating from there, spent quite a while spent another year or so finding work. It's a very difficult industry to find work in. It's one of those highly saturated. It's an employer's market, as you say. A lot of people want it and very few positions available. So eventually found a placement in a company called the Video Lounge as running their studio department. It's a post-production facility working in the film and TV industry. I was initially aiming for a music studio, but ended up there by chance, which ended up being a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I grew very quickly. If you don't have any understanding of post-production, which is what we did, well, the department I was in, I was doing the sound, so the final mix of edits and films and such like. And the kind of ratio of work for the edit, which will cut the video, and then it comes into sound, editors will spend about 10 times more time on a project than sound will. So if it takes 2 weeks to edit something, I could usually, you know, in sound, you usually get it done in a day or so. So we only had 4 editors and me, which meant there was a lot of free time. So what ended up happening is I started picking up some edits. I started working on first just some rough assembly type work, and then slowly getting towards doing actual edits for clients, sitting on edits, doing commercials, and so developed that skill in the industry. Never studied it, but really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun. So stayed there, was there for a couple of years, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, met a lot of good people. One of the people I met ended up making me kind of a offer I couldn't refuse. And I started, then I was probably about 24, 25. I started my first company with this individual. He was a music producer, very talented, award-winning producer. We kind of sat down and, you know, he offered me opportunity to go with him and start a company. We managed to find very good funding. And yeah, kind of went on from there, and have never kind of looked back in terms of company ownership, in terms of working for myself. And then, yeah, like I said, just very briefly owned that company. We had that for a few years. Unfortunately, came to a little bit of a bitter end, but I learned a lot again. Took that on. I then started my second company with a partner by the name of Josh Burrell. The company was called The Post Office. We were a post-production company in Cape Town. And yeah, we did that for a few years, had a lot of fun doing it. Got to a position in the company where a very big retail client of ours, a contract had kind of run out, and we're coming to the end of it. So we kind of had to make a decision on where we would go from there, on where we would take it, and sat down, had a good chat, and realized that we were both kind of happy going. So we had different ideas of what the future held for each of for ourselves. So ended up going different directions, and since then, I had a production company, do a lot of freelance, and just enjoy myself and trying to do projects I enjoy, keep me happy.
Sounds really, really good. And I want to build up on a few things that you mentioned. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting notion where you said just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that's a really interesting concept. I would like you to delve into a little bit more, as in, how did you come to that realization? Was there a key moment in your life where you just had that light bulb moment, or was it a process that helped you to come to that realization?
So I actually have a very vivid memory of that moment you're speaking about. And I've spoken about it many times before. I mean, I just want to mention, I went through all my career now. Where I'm at the moment, and I'll get back to this, is I've currently taken a position as executive producer for a big, large production company in Cape Town. So yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later. But that moment you speak of was, so in school I was very maths brain, as they say. I did well in physics, did well in maths, did all those kind of subjects kind of naturally excelled at. I was part of the maths Olympian team and this and that. And so naturally the course always seemed to follow that on, So when it came time for tertiary education, Bachelor of Science, the course of the program I was in was mathematical, physical, and statistical sciences.
Complex stuff.
Yeah, it seemed interesting. It seemed fun. It's one of those courses that's good prospects. Very interesting, difficult to get into. So, like I said, it just seemed like the natural course was to go into that. And then I started, and a couple months in, not very long, I was in chemistry class. It was one of the, first year, kind of have to take courses. And I think I was on my second or third page, double-sided page of balancing one equation. And I just had this epiphany moment of I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. I've always been good at the maths, but I've always had quite a creative side. And I just felt like if it wasn't exciting me in the beginning, the honeymoon period, then 5 years to get the degree and 5 years into it. And I think this speaks to your optionality, but in reverse, where sometimes putting the work in, or sometimes you almost pigeonhole yourself. So by doing the work and by working hard and by putting the time, energy, money in, you actually close your options down. Sometimes can be the case. Speaking, if I refer to, I think we both know Ido Portal.
Yes.
Who's he spoke quite eloquently on this, where he referred to physically training. Everyone thinks, when you go and do a sport, or you run, or you get strong, or you do rings, or you choose any specific field of sport, everyone considers it this omnispherical growth pattern in terms of like physical ability, but it's not. It's more you grow in one direction and it actually pulls you away from the other. So the guy who can deadlift 500 kilos is probably not the fastest runner in the world.
Yeah, I think you're referring to a trade-off that
Yeah,
you experience.
Exactly. So I just felt like the doors I was closing off were maybe avenues I was more interested in, or could be more interested in, and I wasn't sure enough in this path. There was a long path to head down, and I kind of in that moment walked out of that class, went home, had a chat with my folks. They were very understanding, and they said, well, give it some thought and think which direction you want to go. So I think that was the kind of moment that everything changed in that classroom, in that lecture hall.
It's really brave of you to be able to acknowledge such a key moment in your life, and not only merely acknowledging it, but also taking the steps towards pursuing a different path. Because the reality is that, as you rightfully said, math and physics do offer you a hell of a lot of optionality. There's no question about it. In terms of the career paths that you could have chosen, the different fields that you could have gone into. But because you also knew that that wasn't for you, you decided to create another form of optionality for yourself down what I would call the road less traveled. And that in itself is a completely different set of challenges altogether. And I would very much like to hear your story on how you navigated through all those challenges and built yourself up. What were these stumbling blocks? How many times did you feel like smashing your head through the wall in frustrations? Because I'm sure you had many of those days. These are the things that, to me, make a person interesting. It's not all about the smooth, plain sailing from point A to point B, but how did you navigate through all the storms to get to where you wanted to be? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a process. There, in hindsight, definitely gave up a kind of guaranteed career path for one of the most uncertain career paths that exist. Especially today, whether it be sound engineering to recording studios or film industry, or these are definitely industries where a lot more people, it's saturated in terms of people wanting to work. It's an employer's market. There's so many talented people out there, and they're also industries driven by passion. So you've got a lot of people competing for very few spaces, and these people live and breathe it. So it was tough. And like I say, when I finished studying at Cape Audio College, I then went and worked with my father's an engineering company in Cape Town, puts in big LPG gas installations. So I spent a year or so working with him because I still had to pay the bills. So welding up on big platforms and like that kind of work, just, you got to earn. It was a lot of fun. I love working with my hands as another kind of reason I knew that that the science route wasn't right for me. I love getting out. I love working with my hands. I love building things. I love that process, and was definitely getting to a point of, have I made the right choice here? Gave up, there was no going back. Gave up the UCT option, went and studied a course, got a diploma in a field that interested me, but it's very difficult to work in. And I'm sitting 2 years after that and nothing's happening. Getting very disheartened, very worried. What am I going to do? We've gone for a few interviews. Went for, like I said, this interview at Video Lounge, which I ended up at. They called me a few days after the interview to tell me, we're sorry, we've decided you're going to go with someone else. You were kind of our second choice. But this other person had more experience. I know actual working experience. This other person more experience. And, we'll keep in touch. Hopefully something comes up. And I was like, just another no, they're so difficult to deal with. And a few days later, was funny. I think on that day, me and my dad were driving out to a job, and it was kind of there. And he said to me, I don't. You must follow your heart. You must do if a job comes in, but at least give me a week, at least a week or two, to try and find somebody else. I'd be. And so we're driving into a job that day. Phone rings. It's Video Lounge. They'd already told me no. I answer the phone, and they say, the guy that we were pursuing didn't work out. Are you still interested? And I'm like, of course I'm still interested. I'd love to come to. And they said, can you be here tomorrow? Look at my dad, and I say yes. I hang up, and I have to kind of tell him, yeah, Dad, that whole 2-week notice thing. It was very understanding. They've a theme in my life is my parents have been very, very understanding. They've been great and always helped me follow my dreams and my passions. And so, yeah, and then that's the beginning of a long journey, really. A long, intricate, convoluted, interesting, fun journey to today.
Wow. All I can say is that you definitely have a story to tell. There's no question about that. What have you found to be some of the biggest stumbling blocks as part of your industry? I mean, apart from the whole passion thing. And the reason why I wanted to bring up passion is that everyone's got passion in some way or form. I think it's very hard to quantify passion. I mean, you can see it in terms of the way someone responds to something or the way they pursue something, but to measure passion is sort of like asking, how long is a piece of string? You can't, I don't think there's a passion scale in terms of how to actually quantify that or measure that. And and one of the things that I also saw the other day while I was watching a lecture by a guy called Dr. Jordan Peterson was that he said that creative industries are incredibly difficult in which to make it. He said that it's actually exponentially harder to make it in a creative pursuit due to what you mentioned regarding all the competition that you face, but also because creative people are relatively rare in the greater scheme of things. He said, we all like to think we are creative, but it's actually really, really rare to come across a truly creative person, for one. And the second thing is sometimes creative people can be very difficult to work with because of the fact that they are so creative. So I would like you to build onto that because you obviously came from a very structured and mathematical, physics, empirical kind of background, and yet you have this creative side to you. Did you have any issues balancing the two, or do you still find that you have any issues balancing both sides of yourself, and that can create challenging stumbling blocks for you as part of your daily life?
So obviously, first I just like to say I'm very hesitant to speak on behalf of any industry. It's every industry is varied. I've as any one of us, we've only touched so much of anything. I can't speak for a whole group of us. I can only speak to my experiences, how I've kind of dealt with them and how I perceive. I think the reason it's a very difficult industry to get into, if we can start there and or even become successful in and a lot of people speak about this within kind of jokes and stuff around the industries. The way I would describe passion and working in an industry you're passionate about is, I think most basically, is whether or not you were in the industry, you would be doing it anyway. So very few people make their money in the music industry, for instance, right? But a lot of people play music. A lot of people play guitar. A lot of people sing. It's something that people find a lot of passion in. It's something people are passionate about. And whether or not they're getting paid to play the guitar, or whether or not they're getting paid to be in the band or record their own tracks or whatever they're doing, they're going to do it anyway. So the fact that they're, considering that you could do this thing you love and get paid for it, that's obviously the dream. Where that becomes tricky in terms of an industry or any industry like that in particular is if you were going to be doing it for free anyway, it is possible to manipulate it if you're only approaching it purely from a business sense. And it can be manipulated. So there's always that joke about being paid in exposure, or, you know, do this one for free and the next one will come to you. And there's a lot of that where, you know, if you take a fridge repairman, you'd never say to the guys coming to repair your fridge, you know, you fix this first one, and all the rest after that I'm going to pay you. Or they'll never say, listen, if you fix this fridge and do a good job, I'm going to tell everyone you fix a mean fridge, and you're going to get everyone I know's business. It would just never happen. You do it, you have a rate, you come in, you do your job, and you leave. Because no one's sitting at home fixing fridges for fun. I'm not saying it's not passionate. I'm passionate about working my hands and not detracting from any, but if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So it can be manipulated. It can, and then also because of that, you know, on a different vein, I hate to lose track here, but people are practicing it every day. And I watched one of your previous videos and you spoke about, you know, you can become too big and you can stop growing because you've come too big. And I think there's always someone younger in these fashion industries that is like hungrier, more on the ball. The technologies themselves are growing and changing so fast that they're only learning in what you're trying to relearn, or, you know, they're starting. You're trying to forget stuff and relearn the new technologies, and they just come in ahead of the game. So, there's many reasons, and there's many, just there's many reasons why it's difficult. And most importantly, like I said before, it's just saturated. There's only so many jobs out there, and there's a lot more people that want those jobs than there are jobs available. And I think something I'd like to speak about on that, and what's been amazing kind of to the industry, and maybe this is outside of the industry as it were, but things like what you're doing here, this podcasts, YouTube, little channels, Instagram stories. These are all things that didn't exist not too many years ago. And they are public platform for free that you can reach as bigger audience as willing, you know, that is willing to watch you, with, you know, very attainable hardware. And the barrier to entry in terms of getting content out, while it might not be the next blockbuster, you can create an audience. And at the end of the day, that's what broadcast, that's what media, that's what TV, that's what filming is having an audience, catering to it. So I think there's new ways to enter into this industry, and there isn't just the old channels. From when I got into the game, was, you know, the cameras were expensive, the gear was expensive, the only TV could broadcast things. There wasn't all these options. So if you didn't get into a big facility, you didn't get in.
So there's more optionality today, essentially, than what there was before.
Completely. I think we saw it first happened with the music industry. You know, the music industry went from, if you didn't have $1 million studio to record in, if you didn't have the best names, if you didn't have XYZ, you weren't getting out. If you didn't have a big company behind you, you weren't going to be marketed. And then all of a sudden, some kid on his laptop could release some track out into the world by himself. And if it gets traction, it starts to pick up. He's just created a market for himself with very little capital outlay and no ties. You know, the rise of independent artists has been massive.
So it's also very scalable. Optionality seems to be a big theme over here in the digital age, for lack of a better word. But scalability also seems to be another big thing. Because you are 100% correct in what you're saying, though. Is look at this podcast. I mean, I'm not using high-tech sound equipment at the moment. I've got my laptop, I've got my earphones, and as I grow and as it becomes more popular, I'll obviously add more and more technology. to, create a better version of us. Maybe go for a studio.
Yes.
But I can sit here and I can have a very fascinating chat with you about this field. All I need is an internet connection, a laptop, and a webcam, and there I go. It's literally as simple as, and YouTube. Let's not forget about YouTube. And
YouTube is, I'm a bit of a YouTube junkie, I can't lie. I watch more YouTube than anything else probably, because they're not, there isn't this huge broad sweeping trying to hit as much audience as possible. It's so cute. So like, if you're interested in tiny little like cars made in America between this year and this year, you'll find a channel that caters to that. And there'll be millions of hours of content, and you can really like dig into your interest specifically, which isn't available and has never been available to that degree in mainstream media. So I really enjoy that. And people have made very big companies and lots of money on YouTube. There's no need to get into names and whatnot, but like, yeah, you just have to do a little bit of research to see how much some of these channels and some of these companies that they built are worth, and what people are pulling in annually. And it's crazy, it's awesome.
What would you tell anyone who's new to the industry? That let's say, for example, I come up to you and say, Nic, I'm fed up with my career and I want to make a change, and I love what you do and I want to get into your field. How would you go about advising someone like me, for example?
I think what you're doing is an awesome step in the right direction.
By the way, I'm not fed up. Just saying to everyone, I'm not fed up. I'm just using a prime example.
No, I understand. It's so tricky. It's tricky for multiple reasons. First of all, I don't think my journey into the industry, not only is it not repeatable, I don't think it's very common. I think the common route now, the normal route now, would be filming. You go to the film school, you do your years there, you get your degree. You then go and start, if you want to be on set, you can start as a PA or something, work your way up. You're going to start at the bottom and slowly work your way up, like any industry. If you were going to be an accountant, you're going to be this, you study it first, you start at the bottom, you slowly work your way up the chain. It's like a corporate ladder. That really didn't exist to the extent it does today when I was starting. So there were the colleges, there was bits and bobs, but it was very much so almost an apprenticeship program / you had to know someone / you got in and you worked you up and you learned what you needed to learn on the job. Very similar to a classic apprenticeship type situation. So I was very fortunate I've been very fortunate in my life, and in that, I was going towards sound got me to editing, spending enough time in editing and sound and owning companies. I got to a point where I just couldn't be inside anymore. For as beautiful it is owning and working in recording studios, they're a closed box with no windows. And you spend, we call it studio rats, because you're inside for 16 hours a day. You don't see the sunlight. It's a lot of work. And yeah, you miss the outside. So I kind of got to a point where I just needed to get out. So that's when I moved towards a production company, bought some cameras, and my time in editing and in post-production, it adds a lot on set. Once you've been in an edit for multiple years and you're going through footage that's come from set, you start to get a very good idea of, if I just had this shot, if they just thought of this, and you actually learn a lot in post-production. And it helped me a lot when going to set. And I thought about it not just as a cameraman, a lights cameraman, or anyone on set. I thought about it as the guy who's going to get the material. What is he going to want? Because at the end of the day, this chain doesn't end at me. When you're set, it's the beginning of the process. All that data, all those files, all those clips, that all gets sent to post-production, and then they make something of it. So having spent time in post-production, really helped me get an understanding of what they would expect from me, what I could do to make their life easier. Yeah, and then now having such a vast, varied amount of like talents or abilities, let's not say talents, a bit of a jack of all trades. Now moving into a production role as an executive producer, I have quite a broad understanding of the entire process and the industry. And in production and as a producer, you organize everything from top to bottom, you know, from the flights into the gear, to the people, to every single step of the process. And having an understanding of each step and being able to speak everyone's language has become very useful and very powerful. And so in no point of my learning process or career have I thought, okay, if I study this now, then I'll be able to do this. It just happened organically. And I was always open to doing new things. I wasn't like, no, I'm a sound engineer, I don't want to edit. This is not what you're hiring for. It's like, cool, that sounds rad. Let's edit. You know, let's try this thing. And then when someone came to, do you want to start a company? I'm like, that sounds cool. Let's give it a bash. You know, what could go, like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, let's, and always open to these new opportunities. And each opportunity has led to another one where I've never really had my eye on the next one, but they've just being open and just working hard and kind of, I think, loving what you do helps. So that's why I said it's very difficult for me to plot out. I think if there's one piece of advice I would give, being where I am now and someone young trying to get into the industry, just make sure you want it. Like you really, really, really want it.
Yeah.
And you want it in a sense of a professional career. We live in a world where you can have your day job and you can have some cameras and you can make cool stuff. You can have a YouTube channel and you can do things and you can dabble, like same as you can make music for basically very little money and you don't get caught up in the industry. Make sure this is, you know, because a job is a job. And every job has its difficulty. And even if you love it, there's going to be days, because it's your job, because you have to do it, there's going to be tough days. And
where you'll go through the motions. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, even, it's like I say, like there's nothing I dreamed of more than owning a recording studio when I was young. When I was in my early 20s, that was nothing I wanted more. And eventually that studio ended up feeling a little bit like a trapping because it had to keep running to make money. It was still an office. It was a closed-in office. So almost like be careful what you wish for. Make sure, because it's going to be a lot of work. You're going to have to give up a lot. You're going to sacrifice a lot. I gave up a lot of my 20s working to make it in these competitive industries. Yeah, so just make sure you want it. And cliche as it is, anything's possible. If you put your mind to it, you work hard and don't give up.
Absolutely. And what you just said reminded me of a few of the training sessions that you and I used to do back in the day. And do you recall some times as well where we would both look at those rings and you think to yourself, fuck it, I don't even know how I'm going to do this session, but I'm going through the motions. I'm just pushing through. Yeah. Blisters in our hands. I mean, you know, we both.
Yeah, crazy blisters.
And the thing is, though, when you start out, though, do you remember what it felt like learning how to do a false grip? You know, just how brutal that is on your hands. And the reason why I'm mentioning the ring training as well is because of the incredible optionality that it provides. But it's a perfect metaphor as well to show that if you want to be able to do cool stuff, like, for instance, those muscle-ups or iron crosses or all that stuff, you're going to have to earn the blisters on your wrists, so to speak. And what you just described over here is another form of earning the blisters on your wrists. Make sure that you are willing to go through all that pain that you have to endure before you are able to do all the cool stuff and experience the optionality that you'll get from it, because it's going to be painful and it's going to be very unenjoyable in that part of the process.
Definitely. Definitely. Like the 100th time your friends have called you to go out, you're like, I'm working late, or I'm on set, or this, or it gets old quick. But if you're enjoying what you can't do everything in life. You've got to make choices, and that's what I was speaking about earlier, where you're kind of putting away from center, and where you're going in this direction, you're closing off on the other side, and which is why I say, be sure, to use a metaphor, maybe a corny metaphor, but like you can have all the power, all the engine in the world, but if you're not sure on your direction and your rudder's not pointing in the right, you're all that is wasted energy. So just make sure you're drifting. What you want, and if you are, or even worse, going in the wrong direction, spending a lot of time, but I think anything is really possible, and I think if you know yourself, but then also don't be scared to change tack. I've changed tack many times in my life, and it was scary every time. And especially when you get to a certain point in something, and then like when you're going to start back down here again. But it's always been fruitful. It's always been fun. I love a challenge. And that's just starting out of it. Yes, every now and then it's just a new challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I wanted to ask you as well is we both use YouTube, as consumers, but also as producers of content. What have you noticed to be the most profound changes in YouTube over the past few years? Because the algorithm continuously changes in terms of what's deemed as important and whatnot. The keywords that you use, which channels are more popular than other ones. Like, for instance, certain channels were extremely popular a year ago, and now they barely even feature to the same extent. The other thing is, what makes a good video? Is it just the fact that you are spewing out a lot of funny crap or things that people are interested in? Because I've noticed that it's not always the best content that necessarily gets the best views. And I think that's a massive challenge that I've also had to learn to overcome somehow, is that I'm someone who takes pride in my work and the content that I want to produce, but there's also a very fine line in producing a high quality content while also make it relatable and trashy in a way, if I can put it that way, where it's all clickbait. That's it. What are your thoughts on all of this? Because to someone like myself who's not in media, it does feel a bit mind-blowing at times to have to contend with all these things.
I think to answer your initial question is what's changed with YouTube over the years. I could maybe answer it with one word. I'm obviously missing out a lot of nuance and a lot of subtleties, but monetization. The biggest change to YouTube from the time when I started, using the websites to today's monetization. It went from being somewhere people put funny videos up and there was no consideration for quality, or not so much, but like there was no production quality. It wasn't like when you approach a production, there's a lot of steps to consider and make sure that you've got that quality control in the process, where it was just someone like a cat was doing something funny, so you filmed it with your phone, put it on YouTube and got some hits. That was kind of the extent in the very beginning. It was just this, people saw it as a means of putting videos up there, thought other people might find funny or interesting, or things they might want to talk about. And over the years, I would be completely wrong if I had to guess, but like I can't imagine what the value of what kind of the market value is, not just of the YouTube as a company, but every single user, how much money is going through that platform in terms of, first of all, the ad revenue, but then also the indirect ad revenue with sponsorship videos and sponsorship deals. And it's so big. And there's so much competition once again. So there's also just so much. So it's another number I'm going to get wrong, but like I read, and this was a while ago, so it's obviously increased. To be able to watch every video that's on YouTube right now, you would have to live like a few thousand lifetimes watching it nonstop from the day you're born to the day you die without sleeping. So it's very easy to get lost in that content. And then, as much as I was speaking about earlier, it's very acute in their approach to specific niches. as acute as they go, there's still 100 other channels doing the same thing as you. And if there isn't, you are so niche that like you got an audience of 5 maximum anyway. But like the amount of tech channels, the amount of just computer specific tech channels, the amount of like what's blown up is camera channels, like videographers who review cameras, and ironically, they're usually reviewing the cameras that people use to make YouTube videos. So it's a little bit meta, but that happens a lot now. There's a lot of that. So there's a lot of competition. So you've got to find that way to stand out. And I've seen what a lot of people focus on is their thumbnail. They'll make it as like catching of the eye and as clickbaity as you say as possible. There's some kind of like, you'll never believe but, or when you see this, you're just gonna whatever. And it's super kitsch and it's cliche and it's horrible, but like it works. And I think, you know, in saying it's monetization, it's become business like any other business. These are the top channels are multi-million dollar grossing companies that purely exist on YouTube. So that's a competitive space, and that's what it's become. And I think a lot of if you've come in late, you've got to come in hard, you've got to have a plan. And a lot of the people who are up at the top have been around since the beginning. And when they started, you look back at the early videos, it's a big leap from where they started to where they are today in terms of production quality. They've grown with the channel, with their viewers, and with the advertisers and the sponsors.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. That definitely answers the question, because I have noticed that it does feel challenging to produce a very high quality content. And to me, content is not always about how something looks, but you know, the context and the actual relevance of what is being produced, whether it's in a conversation, whether it's in terms of a review of a product or service. You know, does it speak to the audience, or is it just a lot of noise that you are projecting out into the YouTube universe, hoping that someone will listen to what you have to say? And I think that is also a very fine balance that you need to be able to strike between the two. But also accept that at the same time, what's relevant to you is not necessarily going to be relevant to your audience. It's like what a guy called Nassim Taleb refers to in his book Anti-Fragile, called the green lumber fallacy. So the green lumber fallacy is essentially based on the idea that it can be very difficult to differentiate between relevant and irrelevant information, and how easy it is to get stuck on the irrelevant information while discarding the relevant. And yeah, I tell you what though, just doing this podcast, quite honestly, I don't even feel that I know what I'm doing half the time. There are many mistakes that I'm making along the way, whether in terms of forgetting to maybe ask a specific question, just the way that I upload the video, the meta tags that I use. But what I have found is that it has created optionality in the sense for me that I view it as a form of public speaking, because I am projecting myself out into the YouTube universe. I'm sharing ideas. I'm receiving ideas as well. So it's a nice exchange of great ideas. And in every conversation that I've had, I've learned something new. Without any question, I've learned a heck of a lot of new things. And
yes,
now I need to process that information and take that information that I've received and put it to use. Otherwise, it's useless if it's just in my head. If you see where I'm coming from. So it is a challenging process.
I have to say that, like, one of my
No, go ahead, please do.
No, you break out there. I just wanted to say, like, you know, at the same time as the quality's increased and there's become this huge competition on YouTube, podcasts like this and many podcasts, and some people have made a big industry with their podcast, I think content, what's amazing, it's in the same way when the music industry became more open that anyone could have kind of recording studio in their laptop, is more content came out, which obviously then meant, you know, a lot more work, a lot more subpar content, but a lot of people who are very talented, who wouldn't have had the opportunity to create their music and get it out to the public have. And in this, in terms of media, in terms of film and TV, and in terms of video content, I find what it's made more possible and more viable is purely content based, where the big studios very much so concentrate on the $300 million blockbusters, the Marvels, the DCs that I love. You know what I mean? I'm a very big fan. I enjoy going to cinema and love a good blockbuster, but there has been like, it's safer to make that than risk a $20 to $30 million movie that, you know, might do or might not. They know the next Wolverine's going to do well. It's going to cost more, but in terms of return on investment, there's a bit more of a guarantee. So new, in terms of like completely new storylines are very difficult to sell, and like specific content, like focused media is very difficult to sell. And I think that's one of the areas where, you know, this open arena of very small capital investment requirement, and the platform is there for free to use, is providing and creating a lot of just purely content driven media, where it doesn't, there's no matter, even if you had a studio and you had fancy microphones and better cameras, whatever, it's not going to change the content, and people will come to your channel, people will stick if the content's there. And I love that. I love that. That's important. I think it's awesome. So yeah.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it also reminds me of this TED talk that I watched many years ago by a guy called Simon Sinek. And he mentioned something along the lines of, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that boils in, and that links into what you just said, that as long as the content is good, the presentation and the packaging doesn't always matter as much. It's how your message comes across and how well it is received. And he said something along the lines of, the key is to find people who believe what you believe. And that can be a big challenge, to find the people who believe what you believe. Because I remember watching this webinar a few months ago where the host showed that in order to build a successful online business, you need what's called 1,000 true fans to support your business. And I know that in the greater scheme of things, 1,000 people is not a lot. It's not a large number. It's actually quite tiny in terms of the world population. However, finding 1,000 people who are willing to fork out their money to buy into your content, your product, your service, can be challenging. And it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world to do, even though it is doable. Can take a while. I mean, for instance, would you agree with that view, you know, in terms of 1,000 people, or do you think you can get by?
No, I think you do need them, and I think what we've kind of got to this point, and I spoke about it earlier, is because there is just so much out there right now. We've never had so much. I mean, I remember a million years ago being a kid, and it was like 7 o'clock, 6:30 and 7 o'clock was when the shows were on, you know. And like, I'm talking TV, you know, in terms of like, there was the sitcoms were like, there was like an hour block in the kind of supper time. There was like this 2 hours of block of like kids programming in the middle, and there were like a handful of channels. And if you didn't happen to be one of those blocks, you couldn't go on a laptop and find something interesting to watch. There was none of that. So it was like, it was confined to these brackets of like times in which we consumed content, which consumed media. And outside of going to go spend money and watch an actual feature, That was it. There was nothing else. Now we're in the complete reversal of that, where you couldn't watch it all if you wanted to. It's impossible. There's just so much content readily available on multiple platforms. And you know what? A lot of it is interesting. I think if it showed there's a lot of interesting, talented, competent, capable people out there. And there's a lot of like-minded people. So for as much as you're hitting a niche, there's a lot of other people hitting it. And I think everyone who's creating content, there are 1,000 people out there who would support you, who would back you. I think it's a matter. The difficult part is finding them and getting them, more importantly, to find you in amongst the noise. If you picture all that content, just like this massive noise, and to like, how do you break through that? How do you stand out so that you get seen? Yeah, so you know, the answer to that, if you could answer that question, you'd have a
I was secretly hoping you might have some kind of an answer to that. You know,
I think if I did, I think a big part of it, from what I've seen, and from I mean, this is not my field in terms of marketing. Or I'm definitely on the other side, and definitely a lot more tech minded. But it's about multi-platform approach. It's about, you can't just throw videos on YouTube anymore. You've got to have a Twitter channel, or like if it's a news based, you've got to have like a Twitter feed that's linked to it. If it's, you know, lifestyle based, you need an Instagram and a Facebook page. You need to be, you know, going, if you're working on like building cards, you've got to have like forums that you go on, and like, you've got to bring people in from the outside. You can't just pop it on YouTube and hope they're going to find you, because they're not. Unless you get lucky one day where the YouTube algorithm happens to pick you up, put you on page one. Very few people, if you search on YouTube, you're searching for something specific. If you watch a lot of YouTube, you tend to not even scroll too far down. You open it. If
you're right, I don't actually.
Yeah. No, and like what people tend to do is, instead of scrolling, they just refresh it. Like, re-show me the top page, and then maybe there's something there. And within 2 refreshes, you found something. So no one's going into like newly added videos and scrolling through to be billions of, you know, millions of videos of content you have to go, and like the chance to find. So that kind of hope of, you know, throwing something out there and hoping someone catches, it's just not going to happen.
It's almost like looking, it's almost like looking for a need. Yeah, it's like this beautiful quote that I once heard. It's almost like looking for a needle in a haystack of needles, so to speak.
That describes YouTube quite well. So yeah, it's you find your audience, and it also, there is definitely this you gain momentum. So in the same, like, people with a lot of wealth will always tell you the first million was the most difficult, and it took as quick to get to the 10 million mark as it took longer to get to the million mark. Like, that beginning, that start, it's always so difficult starting. It's like kickstarting a Boeing, you know, like getting those first 1,000 subscribers. And then as you start to build, you can just leave it, and then you can concentrate on your content. And you're not really going out trying to find viewers. They're finding you by virtue of your content, your quality, and if it rings true with them. But to start that engine is incredible, especially today where you know, we've all got a phone that can record really good video. We've all, you know, the barrier to entry is very, very low.
Yeah, it definitely is low, and that brings me to something I wanted to ask you as well, is that as someone with an editing background, you know, in both video and sound and all that, from your professional perspective, what makes a good video? You know, what makes a piece of content? I mean,
wow.
Maybe it's a difficult question to answer, but I mean, you know, just in a nutshell, you know, what do you look for? What do you look for to make your content great? You know, to stand out and all that. Because it's something that has become very apparent to me, is that it's really, there's a lot of effort that goes on behind the scenes that most people are not aware of, and creating content isn't as easy as it seems. It's YouTube will have you believe that it's the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's not. It's far from the easiest thing in the world. And, you know, you would have an even greater idea of this than what I would, and many other people would. So, yeah, I mean, if you can answer the question, great. If not,
I think it's a very difficult question to answer purely based on the fact that, like, it's kind of like saying, what's the best car in the world? And then someone would say, well, a Lamborghini. I'm like, cool, how far does it go up a mountain? And well, not very far. So not very useful if you wanted to go to stay in a campsite that's up a mountain, for a very random example. But I don't think there is, I think there's a reason. Even at the awards, there's genres. I think outside of genres, there's platforms, there's mediums, there's what do you want it to do? What do you want it to do for you? What's the goal you want to achieve with it? I think it's so loaded, and there's so many different variables to that answer. That if it depends where, what, who, and why, and so many factors involved. I think if I were to guess, you're probably approaching from the point of view of like what you're kind of doing now, starting small, building an audience, and kind of getting out there, bootstrap style, lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps type vibe. Then I would say believe it and live it. Do the best you can with what you have. I don't think any audience will hold it against you if they see your progression and your growth. They actually kind of, I think that's important. That you could start with like lower end gear and build your way up, and every like few 10, 20, 30 episodes as a new this, oh, it sounds better now. And I think people being part of the process is important. So that's not even like crucial. I think have good content, be consistent. You start to get a bit of traction and you go away for 3 weeks, people are going to find somewhere else to go. And believe it to the extent that you live it, where you're not just dumping videos into the machine, as I said before. Like, if you care about it that much, be a part of the community that you're trying to talk to, and say, guys, I've actually got this channel that speaks about a lot of this. If you want to go check it out, check it out. I think you might be interested in it, and maybe not just purely from like a false marketing sense, but do it because you want to do it. Needs over kind of wants. Like, like if you happen to be doing things anyway, I know a friend of mine has a fishing channel on YouTube, and he's been competitively fishing for a lot longer than he's had a fishing channel, and he was very well known, and it's a very small niche, kind of very, very small niche, like specific kind of fish, like stillwater, like so. And he was a big part of the community before that. And he was like, he looked around, this is back in South Africa. And there was no one in South Africa that had this channel that was focusing on. So like, he'd go to all these events, all these meets, all these competitions. No one would be filming it, no one could watch it. He thought, you know what? It's not going to be difficult to throw a couple of GoPros on the boat, interview some people afterwards, cut it together, and put it out there. So he didn't create videos and hopefully to throw it into. He was already part of a world, and he saw a need in that world to capture the events, and has built up a decent following because he started with a following. So live it, be a part of it. Otherwise it's a very good way to not get lost. But like I said, this is very much so not we're heading into marketing here. If you want to ask about cameras, I could probably get a bit of insight, but rather boring. But that's how I would kind of approach it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, that's a really insightful way to describe it. Because to me, for instance, as someone who's not from a technical background in terms of sound editing and video editing and stuff, I have looked at the software being used, and very often I've just thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. I absolutely just don't know what I'm doing. Which is why, for instance, one of the reasons why I decided that I prefer not to edit these conversations that I have, for one, because I don't actually know how to edit it. But two, the more important reason is I like to keep an element of realism to it. I prefer not to cut out any pieces. I want it to feel authentic. I want it to feel as if you and I were literally sitting in the same room, just having a conversation, and someone was privy by being a fly on the wall, hypothetically speaking. And
Yeah,
being
yeah,
what we were
I
talking
hear
about.
that. I think there's, yeah, I hear what you're talking about. It's difficult because my world is taking large amounts of content and whittling it down to the most interesting points and the most interesting parts. I think, ironically, what I would suggest is YouTube itself has a wealth of knowledge available for any aspect of these, like whether it's editing or sound mixing or whatever. There's so much information out there. You could learn so much for free. I like the idea of the honesty of, just one long run. But then there's a big part of me, the editor in me, that's like, I can't watch an hour of something and not think of half of it, to just cut away and just like, I think that's what an editor's job is, to tell its story.
Okay.
And you start with this long, hours and hours and hours of content, and I've, whittled it down to minutes, and that's, but it's two different approaches. So a lot of podcasts do just let it run. And I don't think either is wrong or right. I think maybe the odd, when Nic was rambling on about something he knew nothing about, might be a good time to just get rid of that section. But yeah, I
Likewise.
don't know. Yeah.
I
But like, just be true to your belief. Like, if you think whatever you think the right way to go is, do that. Like, there is no right and wrong in terms of it's also objective. Like, there's no perfect color. There's just, I like blue. What color do you like? There's, what I mean? There's no right or wrong in that. There's just a case of like, have a vision, be honest to it, and stick to it, and don't let anyone sway you from it. And if you do that, I think you're on a good track.
Oh, definitely. It reminds me of this video that I saw with Stan Lee, the guy who created many of the Marvel superheroes that we absolutely love and adore. And he said, for instance, that when he showed the newly created Spider-Man to an editor at that time, the guy said that it's the absolutely worst idea that he had ever come across. And he said that if he had listened to that idiot, then we would have never enjoyed what turned out to be one of the most popular and greatest comic book characters of all time. 100% there. So it boils down to what you just said, that just because other people can't see what you're trying to do at that particular point in time doesn't mean that you should not do it. And it certainly doesn't mean that it can't provide you with the optionality that you desire along the lines. But optionality, as with anything, does take a bit of time to manifest. It's not something where you follow a new approach and all of a sudden results just appear out of thin air like that. Just doesn't work that way.
No, and also, that person that told him he didn't like it, he wasn't wrong, because he didn't like it.
Yeah.
And nothing that's ever been created has 100% approval of everyone. So for that person, he was right. Yeah, he didn't like it. He probably still doesn't, and that's fine. But I'm creating it for everyone who does like it, and that's fine by me. And I think that's very important. I think it's very important to be honest to your belief, your vision. And I think keeping that vision true is everything. Today.
I agree with you. I mean, Nic, we could talk about these topics all day. I'm absolutely fascinated by what I've learned from you, because it's not only is it.
I hope I didn't ramble on.
No, you didn't ramble. In fact, I was listening very intently. Just to your life story, in terms of the the stumbling blocks that you've encountered across the way. And as you said, things don't just manifest and expand in this omnisphere, so to speak. You get pulled into specific directions. So that trade-off is something that we all have to live and deal with. You know, if you spend more time in sector X, you're going to be able to spend less time in sector Y. You know, it's like the physical development as well. The more strength you want, the more you have to sacrifice your flexibility to some extent. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of speed, as you said as well. You know, you have to decide what you want, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's a key point to keep in mind if you want to achieve maximal optionality. And to revert back to good old Ido Portal,
yes.
He always said that he sees himself as being an excellent generalist and not a specialist. And I think being an excellent generalist may be exactly what is required if you want to achieve maximal optionality. Because an excellent generalist can often do what a specialist can do. Maybe not as well, but they still can do it. And if something is required in another field where they also have general experience, they will be able to adapt and quickly learn how to become very good at that particular thing. If they move from, say, point A to point B and decide, you know what, I've had enough of this, let's go into that. And
completely. I think that's sorry to interrupt, but that very much has been my my truth through my process. And I believe there's no right and wrong way, and I think we need specialists. They are so crucial to everything. Like, we need someone who's done 20 years of, not just 20 years on camera, 20 years on camera shooting car movies. Like, we need those guys. They are the bread and butter of every industry, and they're what progress the industry. But I find people who, generalists, as you say, people who aren't scared to grow and develop and change and move around a bit and take what they learn from one thing to go into the next, can kind of be the glue between everyone. Where specialists don't like, you know, if you're specialist in one field and you're specialist in another field, there's got to be somebody who speaks both languages to connect the two and make a great product out of all of them. And like I was saying earlier, like, this is where I would never plan to, but is leading me in direction of production side, and where I find myself today in my new role. And it's not something I would have ever dreamed of going into, but it's such a great fit, I find, because I understand all the processes that it helps me speak their language. It helps me bring everyone together. If an editor or a DOP or a director has a complaint about something, has an issue, he's not talking to a brick wall. I know what he's talking about, you know, at least to a certain extent. And I think it's worked for me, and I've enjoyed it. But like I said, I think there's a need for all different types of people.
I fully agree with you, and this leads me to the next question. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to convey? You know, something we maybe didn't touch on, or which was a lot to begin with. In any case, I mean,
yeah, it's funny. We spoke a lot less about the film industry, of which I work in. I think just to talk a bit about it, the lights really come out behind me, and I can't believe I'm completely, the background's blown on. I'm just a silhouette. It was cloudy. For anyone watching this, saying this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because he is lit horribly.
That's
it was
London for you.
Started, and it was, and now the sun's come on. I'm just a silhouette, but that's fine. It's a difficult time at the moment in the film industry with COVID. I think certain industries have been hit to different degrees, and I don't know anyone in my industry who hasn't had a difficult time with it. Obviously, and not to say there weren't so many others hit harder, much worse, whatever. This is, like I said, I can only speak for my truth and what I know. I've got friends in the events industry, equally bad,
Oh yeah.
restaurants, and in
Oh
any
yeah.
kind of human interaction industry. It's been hit terribly hard. But so I'm not taking away from this, but all I can speak of is my industry, and it's had a huge knock. And going forward, I mean, no one knows what's going to happen in the next month, 6 months, years down the line. Is this the new normal? Is this just a few more months? Is it going to go away? Is this going to be something that's recurring in different forms? Is this going to be so no one knows? But film industries are very, very, very difficult places to keep your distance. It is a lot of people working in a small space. The film industry is an amazing place because you've never seen so many moving parts of this machine that all work together to create amazing content. Like the amount of people, the amount of gear, all different departments, all working very close to each other and on each other's toes, and long hours, early mornings, late nights, constant work, lots of traveling. And it all works, and we end up with amazing product. But it's very difficult to have actors not get within 2 meters of each other. It's very difficult for makeup department, for all the different departments. So like on the camera alone, you've got 3 or 4 people whose job it is to touch that camera at any one time.
No, yeah.
You've got someone pulling focus, or the DOP is right behind you, or the cam off, or DIT's coming every now and then to soft card, your puller. So there's so much inevitable closeness in terms of proximity. So there's a lot of questions to how it's going to start up. And I think a lot of people are having it rough right now. No one knows kind of where the future is going to be, or what's going to kind of happen. And yeah, so I don't have a solution, just a spoiler there. I just wanted to say that, like, I think there's been a lot of, on the groups I follow, there's been a lot of camaraderie, a lot of people pulling together, a lot of people trying to help. It's been great to see, and I really hope that going forward, we can find a way to make it work. I hope everyone gets back to work soon. And yeah, it's been a rough few months for the industry. So speaking about the industry is a bit tough because anything I say might be obsolete in 6 months. But yeah, looking hopefully to a bright future soon for all the crew, cast, and people in the industry soon.
Absolutely. You guys have been hit extra hard due to the close proximity in which people have to operate. And I think the same can be said for many different types, but I know of people who work in the modeling industry and in the casting industry, for characters and so on and so forth, and they've been completely out of work. There is just zero work going around at the moment. I mean, those are just the guys in front of the camera, a very small section of the actual production, as you said. We're not even talking about the grips, as you said, the gaffers, I don't know all the terms, but the guys dealing with the cameras, and
so many people, yeah.
So my wish.
But I think we're all. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I think we're kind of all in this together. I think there's very few lucky industries. I've been lucky indirectly. My wife works for a big multinational corporate, like digital company. She does very well, and obviously she's just been working remote, and it's kind of been business as usual. So while it's been tough on my side, at least we have that kind of income, which has been a lifesaver. But I know a lot of industry people are with industry people. A lot of people in the film industry end up with people in the film industry because it's the only people who can usually put up with your hours or put up with your lifestyle. You've kind of got to be in it to be able to sympathize. My wife's obviously just amazing. But yeah, so I'm very lucky, but yeah, there's a lot of households out there that are struggling. Yeah. Hopefully it all rectifies soon.
Yes, let's definitely hope so. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. So thank you incredibly much for the time that you set aside for this. And I definitely learned a heck of a lot. And you've given me a few things to consider regarding my own productions and my own approaches to things. And yeah, I just really appreciate connecting with you again. We definitely have to do a session of ring training and hang out and all that when things calm down a little bit. So yeah, hopefully I won't be too in too bad a shape to be able to well, not do my exercise.
I was gonna create the same caveat going in. I don't know if I could. I don't know. It's very difficult keeping fit in lockdown. It's been trying, but yeah, that'd be great. I just wanted to few plugs before I go. I just wanted to say first of all, the team at Hoodlum Films, who I've just joined. So proud to be a part of them. Anyone's check it out. It's hoodlum.tv. Specializing in full service. It's a full service film company. So from fixing to production to any requirements globally, internationally, huge footprint in Africa and making our way into Europe. Please check us out. And if you wanted to see more of me or my work or what I've done over the years, you can check out nicturton.com. It's NICTURTON.com. And yeah, just a bit of work there that I've done. And it's been great catching up, man. And hopefully we can see each other soon.
Yes, that would be fantastic. Good thing for calling the shout out. I was just about to ask where people could find you. So you beat me to the punch there, but no matter, that's all good. This is for promotion as well. So as I said, thanks a lot for your time, Nick. I really appreciate it and look forward to catching up with you again soon. I don't know if you can hear me there.
Go well, man. Speak to you soon.
You too, my friend. Have a good one. Cheers.
Cheers. You too, bud. Bye.
Bye-bye.